how do we start to take academia back? What is the best route to achieve that?
Well, I'm not convinced it's possible in certain areas. I think we have to build new colleges and new institutions. My big fear is that this woke ideology is now infiltrating the social sciences. It's also infiltrating engineering and mathematics. The things that you thought would be immune to the kind of racial preference, worldview is now totally and completely infiltrated. And so I wrote a whole book called The College Scam. So I'm not exactly big on saving higher education, but I do think there is a place for higher education. And it pains me because I go and I visit to Hillsdale College quite often. Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, by the way. They do a fabulous job. And it pains me because I see how good education could be. I sit down in these classes at Hillsdale College, and they're studying Aristotle's Ethics. They're studying, Augustine. They're studying the Summa Theologica by Aquinas. Now, I would just venture a guess that many of you have probably not spent more than maybe a week or a month or a semester thinking about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle and what they had to offer. If you guys are, then I'll stand corrected on that. Or talking about why Western civilization is the greatest and most excellent experiment in self-government in human history. Why is that the case, right? And so education can be great. And there is a place for students to learn classically and read the great books and to have dialogue and discussion. That's not what's happening on university campuses. Instead, you get a steady diet of Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi, and of Gene Stefanik, and of Intro to Critical Race Theory, and Herbert Marcuse, and Michel Foucault, and Jacques Derrida, and postmodernism and poststructuralism, that really these ideas could be entertained for a short while. It's a really bad idea to build a worldview around them. In fact, it's a great way to burn everything around you if you actually do that. So how do we reclaim it? I think it's time to support the good institutions and build new ones.
What do you think the content being taught predominantly in public schools is wrong? And then what core concepts do you think should be, including moral values, should be taught?
Yeah, government education is a disaster. So we should go back to a classical form of education, which is rooted in goodness, truth, and beauty, not just in a buffet line of all the worst ideas that the West has to offer. The government schools are very industrial based. That's a Prussian school model that was pushed forward by John Dewey in the late 1800s and early 1900s, which is very much about looking at people as future bureaucrats and widgets in a machine, not as sovereign individuals that was made by a divine creator with a purpose. So there's a lot wrong with the government education system. But yeah, I would go back and to the books that are being taught, to the ideas that are being espoused. The government education system is a complete and abject moral failure.
And you mentioned how no longer are they being taught on the basis of a divine creator. Do you
Yes.
think all school systems, even public, should
Yes.
have that underlying
Absolutely.
foundation?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the Declaration.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kirk. First off, thank you for coming to Illinois State. I had a couple questions in the spirit of being at Illinois State, a school known for its education. You already touched on some things about the role of college moving forward in regards to AI, STEM. What about the role of an educator, someone who, like myself, who's trying to teach secondary education in high school?
It's a great question. I will do this. I have a very strong opinion of what education is.
Yep.
Are you studying to become a teacher?
History education teacher.
Awesome, good for you. Why don't you tell me what education is in its ideal and practice?
So I think that's two things. A little bit closer? Yeah, so I think that's two things. In regards to traditional college, what it's normally been is the burden of proof. Whether you're taking a math class or you're taking a history class, it's all about providing evidence to support an answer, right? Identifying the difference between speculation and evidence. So there's the issue of burden of proof, which, again, that might change with AI and new technologies. In regards to a high school student, I myself, as a history teacher, the first question that I should ask myself is, am I someone worth learning from? I think we already have this pipeline of high school to college back to high school, and some really competent teachers are probably capable of teaching students with that amount of experience. I don't think that it's common, probably for everyone, and I enjoy having life experience outside of that. Outside of that, the role of educators to develop competent and capable students.
Great. I don't disagree with that. I think there's another thing to that. Do you think educators should be more like carpenters, meaning they're making students into something, or more like gardeners, letting kids grow?
The role of an apprentice, right?
Not even, just metaphorically. Like, do you think that it's your job to turn a student into a specific thing, or to let kids grow into what they naturally are?
The latter.
Grow into what they naturally are.
The latter, and
yeah.
also support that growth where it can be supported.
Do you think it's your role as a teacher to point them towards a certain conclusion?
No, but I think it's my job to help them identify, burden of proof, right?
Yeah.
Identify the difference
Sure.
between.
That's where we disagree. I think, of course, it's the role of a teacher to point towards something.
Okay.
And that's fine. We're just going to disagree. We believe, as conservatives generally, that you have 3 truth claims: the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Yeah.
And you should try to point a child towards those things. You should try to read things that enrich and nourish their soul and their being towards an appreciation of the elevated things.
Yeah.
It's a difficult concept because none of that is probably talked about here at Illinois State, right? It's much more technical and mechanistic, and a German view of education.
Exactly. It's normal, named after the German.
Yeah, exactly. Where we have a classical view of education, much more Athenian in nature.
Yeah.
Where we want
Alexander the Great to Aristotle, Aristotle to Plato. That apprentice-student
Well, actually, it was
relationship.
Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, but that's fine.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's okay. Yeah. That's
Look, I've already taken a couple L's this
I'm sorry.
week. So,
Jeez, what happened?
Sparring.
Oh,
Just,
good
yeah,
for you.
Sparta heavyweight, but
Awesome, good. And that's fine. It's not a matter of disagreement. We think the teacher should challenge and elevate the student towards the good, and that a teacher should be unafraid to tell a student, you're totally wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
And then and to try to get them to naturally get towards an endpoint of a certain conclusion. If, for example, if a teacher has, if they come to the conclusion, well, if my students believe whatever they want to believe at the end of this, it is what it is. We don't
There's
think
a lot of flaws in that. Yeah.
We don't think the teacher's done their job.
100%.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So-
thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Have a great day.
College enrollment rate has been dropping every single year for the past few years. Education feels much less regulated, not up to date, and pretty not advanced anymore. What do you recommend if you want to get educated but don't think a college education is the best way?
It's a good question. It depends on what you want to do, right? It depends on what you want to actually,
Right.
For
example,
pursue.
sorry to interrupt, but this college here has promised to raise their tuition 35% over the next 5 years. 7%.
I mean, it's incredible. I'm going to be honest. In the next 10 years, we're not there yet. These colleges are going to be completely irrelevant.
Absolutely.
AI is going to take away 90% of the jobs, and advanced robotics is going to basically take over the world as we know it. So find something to study and be good at that AI can't do.
Thank you.
It's the best piece of advice I have for young people.
Thank you, Charlie.
Find something to be good at that AI cannot do.
Thank you.
It's a short list, by the way.
Yeah.
Because AI is getting pretty advanced, as you well know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
If I remember correctly, you said something along the lines of the purpose of education should be to kind of breed gratefulness for being in an awesome, amazing country. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So education comes from a Latin word, which means to lead forth. It literally comes out of Socrates' allegory of the cave, well, Plato's allegory of the cave, as told by Socrates, of leading forth out of darkness into light. So there's this debate right now of what is education, right? Should education be kind of a buffet line where you present students with all the different options and they kind of choose for themselves? Or should education be hopefully a commitment to things that are objectively true and good and beautiful, and leading young people towards what is the beginning of philosophy, which is wonder? Like, wow, there's a world so big outside of things that I'm just beginning to understand, and I know so little of it, but I want to go in the pursuit and the journey of maybe getting closer to it. So those are two different types of definitions, right? So one form of an educational definition is, you know what? We are going to try to sample every single ideology, and kids and students choose for themselves. I think that's a mistake. Now, the downside is if you get really, really bad teachers, all of a sudden they're going to use that, and they're going to be like, oh, well, we know Marxism is better than that, so at least we'd prefer the buffet line over serving, bread lines of the equivalent of Marxism. Whereas in its ideal, though, in the classical sense, people that are teachers, people that want to lead forth, they need to be willing to make absolute objective claims in three categories: in ethics, in metaphysics, and in politics. That's not political parties, but in certain political systems. And so the correct and the ideal view of education should be that. Is it? It's so far from that, it's hard to believe. Anyone here classically educated? You kind of know what I believe here? Yeah. And you would know that it's not actually imposing those ideas. It's teaching the fundamentals of Greek, of Latin, and Hebrew, reading ancient and great books, and getting closer towards that hopeful end conclusion of a better citizen. And so people say, Charlie, what does a properly educated man look like? A magnanimous man. Someone that has character. Now, character comes from a Greek word which means imprint or tattoo. It's etched within you. A properly sold man with character is like the Grand Canyon, where good luck undoing that. Good luck trying to change that. That's what education should be. A properly sold man is like the Grand Canyon. Look at it, you're impressed. No matter how much rain, storm, or opposition happens, that stays in put. In fact, education is like the opposite of it. It's like a plate of spaghetti. It changes as you want to. There's no form of it.
I do agree with some of the things you said about education should be about objective truth and things like that, although I don't think necessarily ethics has like an objective morality to it all the time. But the root of your argument with Vash was kind of, he was saying how you were arguing that the purpose of school shouldn't to breed like mini activists.
That is true.
So from that, I kind of get the idea of whitewashing history a little bit in order to not like breed activism, when in reality I don't think education should like ascribe a morality to our country. It should kind of just be like you said, objective truth, history, and then they kind of will make out of it what they got.
Yeah, so I would never support whitewashing anything, obviously. I think that if you fairly and read the founders as they are, you'll realize these were incredible men, that they were born into a world that they did not create, that by the time that they were exiting the world, slavery was on its way out, that the first ever anti-slavery convention was hosted by Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia in 1775. I could go on and on and on. But I think a proper view of history using original texts, actual quotes, and going into the actual context of the time, I think actually creates a sense of pride and a sense of gratitude for living in that nation. So happy to dive into that further. I don't think we're going to explore that much more because I know we're low on time. But I'll say this final thing, is that this is where we'll have clarity but not agreement on this one issue. I believe there is an objective ethical code. I believe that there is an objective ethical code of how we treat people that are less powerful than us, of a proper way to organize society, of what the highest form of existence for a human being should be. I think one of the great roadmaps, in addition to the Bible, which is the greatest roadmap, but one of the roadmaps that isn't taught is Aristotle's ethics, of what does a properly sold man look like? Courage, contemplation, justice, friendship, all these things that need to be wrestled with and asked the question about. I think that if we say that there's no such thing as objective morality, then we're in nothing more than a power dynamic, which some people in control of our country actually believe. But thank you so much for being here tonight. Appreciate it.